Now, I truly appreciated that children's story this morning. It was really beautiful, huh? And our lection today, as we look at a trajectory as we move toward Passion Week and as we look at Good Friday and Easter Sunday and the death and resurrection of Christ. So we see that in John, here in chapter 12, the first 8 verses, we see that Lazarus, which was a lectionary reading last week, Lazarus is present. It was just a short time prior to that he was raised from the dead by Christ, according to the story. Tintoretto, beautiful paintings of the resurrection of Lazarus. I have a few to show you. This is another one of his, done a little later. I actually prefer the first, but I'd show you both. And of course, the Dutch master Rembrandt. Powerful, powerful. Look at her face. Absolute astonishment. That's what that is, huh? That's what that is. And he had been dead for how long? 4 days. There we go. Now this, Linda English is helping me with some of this. She sent me this. She's been in New York City. That's support. She sent me this. Beautiful sculpture. This isn't exhibited anywhere, but this is Jackie Binns, who is an ecclesiastical artist in Britain. And this is what someone said about this. The set plaster holds the fabric grave clothes. In this one moment, when the viewer sees Lazarus for the first time, before we begin to know the power of what it is we see, it is haunting and breathtaking. This person said, I was particularly struck by the whiteness of the bindings. The light and whiteness seems so cold. So here he is, exiting the grave, with the grave clothes still on, and you'll notice even his head is covered. So this kind of precludes what we're about today. So Lazarus is in the home with Mary and Martha and Jesus, which was a favorite place for Christ to go, in Bethany, just outside Jerusalem. This is just 6 days before the Passover that this is taking place. So we find that there are 2 types of people that are depicted in this text, and that will come into play over the next week or two. Those who believed him, it says, the latter part of chapter 11, and had witnessed or heard of Lazarus being raised from the dead, and whose figures again, they figure in this text this morning. Amongst these were zealots, and the zealots had an agenda. They wanted to take Christ and see him become king of the Jews and to rid Palestine of the Romans. There was that group. The second group that comes into play are the temple authorities, the Pharisees, the chief priests in Jerusalem. They were rich and powerful religious leaders who were, in some senses, collaborating with the imperial domination of Roman occupation. And this group did not want to crown him king. They wanted to kill him. So this is what foreshadows this text and what we will see unfold as a hostile environment quickly develops and envelops Christ. So here we see that Jesus is well aware of what lay before him. Yet he is determined to fulfill his Father's will. Now, this is another one that Linda sent me. contemporary artist from a different culture, obviously. But here we see Mary Magdalene anointing the feet of Jesus and wiping his feet with her hair. So we're told here that this is in preparation for Jesus' death, but also we note that there is an objection here. Judas Iscariot is present, and he considers this anointing of nard, which was worth probably 1 year's salary of an ordinary person. He sees this as a terrific waste because he was the treasurer. No implication for treasurers here, but he was dipping into the communal purse. Okay, and he is confronted with that. So John's story turns to the final days of Jesus' life, those who accompanied Jesus on his journey to the cross. Not only is this Mary a faithful disciple who devotes herself and all that she has to Jesus, but also Judas, an unfaithful disciple. Now this is significant. Unfaithful, who steals from the common purse and who will ultimately betray Jesus, but both are included in this story, and they both factor into the upcoming events. One is faithful, one is not. And their inclusion tells us a great deal about the meaning of the cross and the inclusive nature of God's grace. Interesting, isn't it, huh? That God's grace is that embracing. To reflect on the miracle of generosity, because this is what we see in John. A common theme through John is the abundance and the generosity that takes place and is given in examples to us as we look at the various stories, all indicative of the abundance of God's love and grace toward each one of us. So throughout the fourth gospel, Jesus provides a blessed abundance. Now I'm just going to go back and show you some paintings that I've shown you before. You remember that one? Another example of the abundance of Christ. At Cana, 180 gallons of new wine are created, as the story goes, even more than the wedding crowd can consume. A metaphor of abundance. And I showed you this one. You remember? Japanese depiction. And you remember that? That's going back a number of weeks. And then I showed you this one from Haiti. All of displaying the abundance. Then there was, I showed you this, the feeding of the 5,000. Doesn't look like 5,000 are there, but they're there somewhere, okay? Camouflage, I'm not sure. But this is what this is depicting as we look at this painting. And then, of course, I talked at length about this, which I won't today. But the catch of great fish, another depiction of God's abundance, God's extravagance. As Jesus told them to go out and launch out into the deep and let your nets down. Well, sorry, but we didn't catch fish. We were out there all night. Go ahead and do it anyway. And they caught more than they could handle. 153, it says. So we're back here with the anointing of Christ's feet. There is an abundance wherever God is present. As Mary generously anoints him, he tells her critics to leave her alone. Generosity breeds generosity. And Judas can criticize Mary for what she has done, but the story parenthetically exposes his hypocrisy. Either we love generously or we do not. I was talking to Ross White this week. He gave me a quote that I want to finish with, which I think is a really good one. Where are you, Ross? I'm giving you credit for this, wherever you are. Okay, there, back there. Okay. Now listen to this. I like this. He says, if your goal is noble, great forces will come to your aid. Isn't that a great quote? Generosity fits into that realm. If your goal is noble, great forces will come to your aid.